Thank you very much, Trevor, and welcome everybody. A lot of folk on the call today, and an opportunity really for us just to not go over what we already know about 20-minute neighbourhoods, but to start about the fresh thinking that we've got to get into now, that we have them embedded in the National Planning Framework. I'm going to just share my screen in order that I can run through a few slides to begin with that context. And then I'll also go on to just share what it is that I myself have been doing within the work that I am doing across both the Improvement Service and Public Health Scotland around that 20-minute local living neighbourhood concept, and the fact that as an approach, it's a place-based approach and what is happening in that respect. So is that viewable, Trevor? Is that okay? My presentation up? Fantastic, that's great. So our title today is Local Living and 20-minute Neighbourhoods, and that's reflecting how this has been captured moving forward now within the National Planning Framework. Just for absolute clarity, right at the beginning, what is it that it all means? And I can remember so many questions happening about this a couple of years ago. What is a 20-minute neighbourhood? And quite an obsession about the number rather than that word neighbourhood. And I think it's just important to highlight as we set out now looking at new approaches that that's what it's about people living locally and being able to walk and get to their daily needs in order to enable their own well-being and the well-being of the planet as well. But the 20-minute neighbourhood aspect of it, that reference, I have to admit, I still like, because it's what has grabbed the attention across the world and particularly for ourselves here today in Scotland. Right back from that first programme for government, where in the introduction to it, Nicola Sturgeon referred to 20-minute neighbourhoods and the kind of local living that we were all doing as a result of COVID. So I think referring to it in the way that we are is useful, because we have, as planners, been working on this for years, but this has really brought it to the fore for us. So for myself, I do keep referring to it as 20-minute/local living, but it really is, and I know who Sam is fully in agreement with this, it's neighbourhood living, and it's how we create that and make that happen across our country. So today what I want to cover is a little bit around the work that we've been doing within the Improvement Service and Public Health Scotland with a range of other organisations. In the lead up to the National Planning Framework, we knew that we had that 20-minute living and that local living concept coming through for us when the National Planning Framework would come online. So we were beginning years back to actually think about this and think about how we pull together around that. So I want to just spend a little bit of time looking at the features and the concepts that underlie what creates a 20-minute neighbourhood, and the development of Scotland's place and wellbeing outcomes, which came together as a result of the change in emphasis in the lead up to the National Planning Framework, at the same time as having a whole review around the urgency in our country about health inequalities and the urgency about the climate crisis as well. So I'll cover a little on that. Then I'm going to quickly look into that, a few examples really of how can we achieve that triple win? How can we have interventions that are looking at well-being, climate and inequalities, and the beauty of the local living neighbourhood in that it actually does deliver on all of the crises that we're facing right now, because we just don't have the luxury of time to be doing that one at a time. And then I'll have a look at what we're doing as an approach to embed that into decision making, how we've developed that approach and what it is that we're in and running with already, before passing on to my colleagues today who will be sharing their own approaches. And I think what will come across today is that there's a lot of fresh thinking. There's a lot of thinking to be done about how we get on with this. And certainly from my own point of view, this isn't something that planning delivers on its own. The whole National Planning Framework can't be delivered just by planning. It's really requiring everyone to get together across the different services and councils, across different sectors, with the private sector and crucially also with communities. So keeping that in mind as to how do we look at embedding it at far broader than purely planning policy, how do we get everybody working together in order to deliver upon it. I keep getting my thing blocked up by comments coming in, but never mind. I'll use this instead. So to focus in firstly, apologies, to focus in firstly on the features that we need in every place to enable that local living, to create 20-minute neighbourhoods. The work that we have been doing across Scotland, as I said, it began back in 2019. We knew that place was coming to the fore in the Planning Act, and we knew that a new set of outcomes had been identified for the National Planning Framework. We also had public health reform happening at that time, and a group of us got together and started to talk about that shared ambition about the places where we live, work and play, and about the struggle in ensuring that we can actually deliver them, and what was it that we needed to help our delivery on them. Now, that Place and Wellbeing Collaborative and all those members still exists and still pulls together in order to promote that local living, and how these organisations plus others can be working together to make that happen on the ground. And at that point, that was when we were having a conversation around there was no real definition in Scotland for what it was that we needed to do to create an effective and successful place. So a group of us did go away and work up what that needed to be, having looked at what the World Health Organization said, what was happening in England and Wales, and what the Town and Country Planning Association's research was saying. And what we came through with was a set of place and wellbeing outcomes. And I would hope many of you have heard of them already. And it's certainly something that our work has been anchored in, as has the work of those different organisations that were on the screen before. They're what every place needs to enable wellbeing of people and planet, to deliver net zero emissions, to be more sustainable, and to enable greater equality, not just in health, but in socio and economic environments as well. So moving those forward, what they actually do in delivering those outcomes and delivering for the well-being of people and planet is they really impact on our behaviour change. And very much that's what local living is about, that we're creating a place that from the minute people step out the door, they're behaving differently. We're not telling them to behave differently or asking them. They're actually just automatically making different choices because of the neighbourhood that they're living in. And it is about that creation of that and our different approaches to help that creation that we're here to discuss today. So when it comes to the place and wellbeing outcomes, having sat and shaped these from a whole lot of different approaches across the world and pulling these together for what actually worked within Scotland, we mapped them across to what was happening at the same time around 20-minute and local living neighbourhoods, to find that if you deliver all of these features in the place and wellbeing outcomes, you're delivering a 20-minute local living neighbourhood as well. So with that in mind, I'll run very, very quickly through what the themes are of these rather than the detail. At the very end of this presentation, there will be links to our website that gives a full amount of detail in the background to these and their content. But they cover the kinds of areas that are already in the Place Standard tool. It's the same evidence that shaped them. And they run through how we move around in our areas, and that everyone has access to good active travel, to public transport, and to roads and streets that aren't dominated by cars, but that are there for the use of us walking and wheeling and cycling and so on. They go through the same themes around spaces, that we all have streets and spaces that encourage us to stop and to use them and to walk. We have natural space, and we all have access to good quality spaces, and we all have access to play and recreation that suits our varying needs throughout our ages, not just for children. Civic space is and a further important aspect, that we are able to have a sense of belonging. We have buildings around us that enhance our feeling of belonging to a place and our history, and that we feel safe as we move through them. We are looking at how we're looking after our spaces, the care and the maintenance of them. And we are also looking at our sense of control. How much are we engaged in those places as the people that live there? And we're also looking at resources. So this is very much what can come in and be seen as being purely the local living aspect, our proximity to services and amenities, our ability to get good quality housing that's affordable and a range of housing, and our access to good quality, fair work as well. But they are all there if we're delivering on that local living aspect, and doing that in order to be enhancing people and planet as well. So with those outcomes in mind and thinking about them as they are taking a place-based approach, if you're seeking to deliver those outcomes, then you are taking a place-based approach. I do frequently get asked, well, what is an example of the kinds of decisions that we're making where we're not perhaps thinking about the impact that we're having on delivering that kind of place and those sorts of outcomes? So just one very short example of the decisions that we make, and these are ones that are made beyond planning, not by a planning authority at all, but certainly can be made within a council, is where we're locating buildings even within a place. So this one short example shows where you have a home, a trip across the top there to a school, a parent dropping their child off, picking up shopping, dropping in an elderly neighbour, and then going off to work. When we make a decision to move that school for the very best of intentions, we move it to a greenfield site where we can quickly rebuild a far more sustainable school that can have better services and amenities for the children attending it. The change in behaviour is the thing that can be the unintended consequence we're not thinking of if we're creating local living 20-minute neighbourhoods. That parent then has to make a choice between not being able to do all of those things, but getting their child to school and then potentially having to go straight to work, cutting out the local shopping, the local business support, cutting out the support to an elderly neighbour that helps them to age in place. Or if that elderly neighbour is actually an elderly relative who they are taking care of, then they can't get to that additional job that is keeping them out of poverty. So that overall impact on all of those aspects about our well-being, our planet and inequality can be an unintended consequence of what we're doing when we're thinking and shaping our places and making decisions with the best of intentions. And that just lists there the kind of impacts that we can have where we keep things local. We can be having a positive impact. Where we keep them and don't have them as local, then we aren't helping ourselves to deliver on our bigger ambitions across Scotland. So how do we actually get this into our decision-making processes then? How do we look at every decision that we are making and make sure that it's not having that kind of unintended consequence on our place? In the improvement service and working with Public Health Scotland, we began by using those place and wellbeing outcomes to begin to assess documents that were coming out, decision-making process documents, such as the local development plan for Edinburgh. We also looked at a master plan area for a new school campus in Ardrossan, and we looked at a regional strategy with the indicative regional strategy for Argyll and Bute. So deliberately looking at 3 different scales to consider how they were having an impact on place and had they actually maximised the positive impact they could have on delivering a local place and a 20-minute neighbourhood. In each of those assessments, we ran through the different plans, assessing how it impacted on the place, sitting with a range of perspectives of people in the room beyond the pure policy writers, different areas of the council, different expertise, folks with a public health background, a climate background, and got them themselves to identify where are the issues here and where this plan perhaps isn't thinking about some of the unintended consequences and making recommendations back on what could change in order to deliver a better local living place as well. The example of when we looked at the Edinburgh Local Development Plan back in 2020 looked at the different scenarios that it was considering at the time. The more traditional scenario it had been developing for many years, including while I worked on that local development plan. And we ran it through a test of more of a 20-minute neighbourhood approach to it. And you can see there the kind of traditional low density, semi-detached housing, and not having a critical mass that particularly supports businesses, and an orientation around the car. But looked also at the other option of higher density, mixed use, emphasis on brownfield, a critical mass that could then support local businesses, local bus services, and local shops, and a reduction in car mileage to meet with the route map that Scottish Government and COSLA have set for us to reduce the car kilometre by 20% by 2030. So what we found in looking at the plan was that as an approach, we were delivering far more if we looked to include policy around that list on the right-hand side there. We also found that there were crucial elements that came through to guide the next plan around the importance of density, having infrastructure in first, looking at housing types and sizes that enabled a proper mix and a community cohesion rather than all families, and nothing for that kind of mix for people to age in the same area. And allowed local businesses and local bus services to thrive because of the density at which they were building. So that was something that at that point we reported back to City of Edinburgh and to all of the different councils that we did those pilot scopings in. And it was what led on to then the Shaping Places for Wellbeing programme, where we're in looking again at the wellbeing of people and planet and working more locally and totally grounded in those place and wellbeing outcomes. We're there to support the delivery of more than just 20-minute neighbourhoods. We're there to support all of those aspects in those top two rows there, including now the National Planning Framework and its asks as well. And the approach that we bring to doing that, to bringing the role of good, effective places into the decision-making processes, is using the Christie Commission, the place principle, the social determinants of health, all about the places where we live, work and play, and those outcomes as well. And where we are in and working and what we are doing locally that is beginning that conversation around creating that kind of place is very clear on the fact that, as I say, this isn't purely for planning. We're working across with both councils, health boards, health and social care partnerships, the third sector, and making sure that we are capturing what is happening in an area, looking at those decision-making processes beyond purely planning. And that, I think, would be my emphasis for today, is that as we're looking at our approaches to how we deliver this local living, we do definitely think of planning and its policy, and it's looking at what's happening and what does it want to see happening. But as we're going round, we think of all the other plans and strategies that we need to have aligning in with us in order to really deliver upon them. For Shaping Places, we're doing that by inputting data on health and well-being, and very much the same sort of data that we're looking at for including in evidence reports as we move forward with those over the course of 2023, and beginning to find a common set of evidence that all local development plans could be using. The place and wellbeing outcomes are there as what we want to see happening in our places. There's a vast amount of evidence and research around those outcomes. They were originally there to shape the questions in the Place Standard tool, and they stand the test of time and are being updated by Public Health Scotland. But the process that we're using when we're looking at the plans and strategies, I'll just quickly cover that as well, because I think it's a process that we need to be looking at across all of Scotland if we want to be delivering that local living environments. And it involves looking beyond purely, as I say, our own spatial planning documents. We need to look broadly at that. We spend time pulling people together, doing that same process as I described for the rapid scoping assessments, where we're asking people, how is this plan contributing to delivering this kind of place, the place that has all the features that it needs for folks to thrive within it, and going through pulling together different perspectives and producing a report of how that plan or strategy could take more of a place-based approach. I do find I read a lot of plans and strategies that say this plan takes a place-based approach and then proceeds to, I can't see where it's taken a place-based approach at all, other than mention it at the beginning. We're helping that to actually happen, to take a place-based approach, to think about the impact that they're having on that place. So that has involved a vast range of plans, from looking at a neighbourhood plan done by a community and running it through the lens. And if you run a neighbourhood plan through the lens of the place and wellbeing outcomes, you start to think this is actually a local police plan that's being produced here, really, isn't it? So that, there's questions coming up there at that level about how we garner that community input into what we're doing and what we're thinking, and bring that into our decision-making process. But as well as looking down at that level, we've also reviewed, a local development plan in South Lanarkshire, but we've reviewed economic strategies. We've reviewed the Dunoon Levelling Up funding bid for their waterfront. And then we're right up at a whole other scale where we've looked at the NHS Forth Valley healthcare strategy. So as an approach, and if we really want to be delivering on local living and getting everyone behind it, we need to be bringing the importance of the place and wellbeing outcomes into so many ranges of plans, types of plans, and geographies of plans as well. And that is what we're progressing at the moment across 7 areas, 7 council areas in Scotland, focusing in on 7 towns, but with the overall aim is to have a spread of that across each of our council areas and across Scotland, and to see the use of the place and wellbeing outcomes and these assessments to bring to life the role that everybody has in delivering this kind of local living. So just to close then, I would say that our own learning from that has been that we do need to get all of our plans and policies and proposals talking to each other if we're going to deliver local living neighbourhoods. And that using the place and wellbeing outcomes as a consistent, comprehensive record of what we need to get right in a place, and then using those as a basis to assess all of those plans, gives us a really effective focus for working across and with the public, the third and private sectors, and for collaborating with communities. So I'm going to close there. That is the link to the 2 parts of the Improvement Service website that highlight a lot more detail over what I've just explained, and also to our Twitter accounts that give more up-to-date updates on what it is that we're doing as we all move forward now and start to think of new approaches and different ways for us all to be working in order to be delivering really effective places rather than our history of being asked to deliver for economic growth or for some form of growth. I think it's a great time for us right now. We have a very supportive national planning framework to allow us to do it. We just need to lift our heads and get a range of approaches and start to see how we can be applying them in order to help us be making better decisions that are impacting on our place.